Hey guys, Palsteron here. And today, before the league starts, I wanted to quickly shout out some small things that we kind of explored throughout the week, some things you might have missed, some interesting items, some interactions. Maybe it can help you out. Let's get into it. First up, let's talk about Curse on Hit and why Mark of Submission is an incredible entry into the league and might even hold out for a long time until you have like very end game gear. So most curses like Despair got nerfed quite a bit this league. They got normalized, which means the difference between level 1 and a level 20 gem is quite huge. And since Curse on Hit only lets you apply level 1, that's pretty damn rough, especially because you also can't get increased effect anymore from them. That got removed. It's straight up just triggers. So now for a lot of the other builds like Flammability, Ellie Weakness, maybe it's not that big of a deal. You have a lot of sources of minus res, right? And there's also penetration on hit-based builds. But on chaos builds, especially if you're not an occultist and you don't have the minus 20 res, there's literally nothing else in the game. At least nothing reliable, only very fringe things, right? So the difference between minus 15 and minus 30, especially at league start, is huge. You also get quality now, right? You get 10% increased effect of curse, which is another minus 3, which would be minus 33. So basically this ring gives you an extra minus 18. Not even talking about that this ring consistently costs 1 chaos because it's impossible for this one to go up really because it is just so damn common versus a Curse on Hit ring, which you can probably only get a little bit later, at least into yellow or maybe red maps. So what I'm trying to say, especially if you're chaos-based build, get yourself a Mark of Submission. Especially if you're an occultist, do not forget that enemies only explode if they're actually cursed. So stuff like Blasphemy will not count to enemies that aren't around you. So if you off-screen something, then it doesn't explode. Number 2, Tainted Fusings just got buffed. It's going to be a lot easier to get sixlings. If you guys played Scourge, you know exactly what I mean. And what that means is for stuff that scales off of levels, that is a huge buff. Now that's mostly spells because, for example, Toxic Rain or Caustic Arrow would probably have their main skill in their bow, but as you can see here, it will be quite easy to get any of these +2s on some of the more common sixlings, right, that you would use, like maybe Cloak of Flame, Lightning Coil, maybe not a Covenant or like a Diala's early. But if you're running any of these, even a Belly of the Beast +2 can be an incredible damage boost. And definitely do not use Fusings unless you absolutely have to. Always use Tainted Fusings. Betrayal is even on the map device, so it should be even easier to get Tainted Fusings. So yeah, you can get like +2 AoE, +2 projectile, +2 duration. Just look out for it. They're obviously going to be sought after. But with some of these uniques, they're just so common that it's just going to be impossible not to find a good one. Which means TLDR, if you have one of these chests, you get like 20% more damage for free. GG. Then another small tip for builds that want to go poison. If one of your main ways to get Wither is Withering Step, then just make sure that if you're Assassin, you don't take this node, or if you have boots with elusive, remove them. Because the nerf to Withering Step does not just mean that you can't reset elusive, it also means that you can't even activate it, also negating all the wither you could get. And there's a currency that people are freaking out currently, which is called Fracturing Orb. We don't know anything about this orb, we don't know how rare it is, but a lot of people are talking about early Harbinger farming. I'm not so sure about this. Now don't get me wrong, this orb is insane. The thing is, when is it insane? Is it going to be insane at early game? Now, my guess would be that this is probably very hard to get, so people are not just going to spam it on their early gear. It's going to be something that people are going to be looking for after like day 4, day 5. A lot of people only after like 2 weeks. So I don't know how good it is to farm these early, because you would rather have stuff that you can cash in early and you don't hold on to. But yeah, that's just what I think is going to happen. Then when we look at the 2020 gem info, we have something very interesting that actually a fellow content creator called Snoobe brought to my attention. Caustic Arrow, the Vaal Caustic Arrow version obviously has a lot of chaos dot, right? But you would also have to look at is that the attack damage it has attached to it. Now, as a lot of you already know, made a Caustic Arrow Poison Ballista build, which kind of stacks the attack damage to apply poisons, right? Instead of the ground effect, because they actually shotgun. So Vaal Caustic Arrow has very similar behavior, but instead of 64.4 base damage, it has 400. So I'm not going to tell you what to do. I don't know if this is something. I'm just saying that you have 2 buttons that can shotgun a 400% damage effectiveness with greater volley that's like 2000%. Is that something? I don't know. You tell me. I just thought it was interesting. On that point, we have Vaal Molten Strike, which doesn't look that impressive on first glance, but there might be something broken with it. I took this from a creator called Anti-Meta Build, but basically what he does is he has a lot of reduced projectile speed, and I just want to pay your attention here. how good this is on a Molten Strike already with the old Threshold Jewel. Now just think about this with a Vaal Molten Shell that chains up to 8 times and can shotgun just as well. Now this next tip is for people who have a build that has maybe life on kill or something during mapping, but doesn't really have leech or something to recover during boss fights. Even for builds that do have leech, sometimes leech is just not enough. If you only have 20% leech, you're not a slayer, right? So what you do is a pretty easy strat is you just throw on life flasks. Now you might think I'm memeing, but there's a lot of boss fights out there where you cannot keep up your Jade Flask or your Granite Flask. It will run out and then it's completely useless, right? Every activation lasts for like 6, maybe 7 seconds, and then it's just completely useless. What are you gonna do? At League Start, when your character isn't very strong, all you kind of need is life flasks. Now you might think they are gonna run out, but not really, because you have Pantheon. In specific, Soul of Verslafa, which says life flasks gain 3 charges every 3 seconds. If you haven't used a life flask recently, that counts for all your flasks. If you think it's a meme and you've never tried it out, just do it. It is incredible. However, always leave at least 1 Quicksilver, maybe even 2 Quicksilvers, simply because you can easier get out of one-shots, signaled one-shots. Some builds don't have enough movement speed, or I don't know, your flame dash is down. So those are still worth keeping. And there's something that a lot of people missed in the patch notes, which is we've changed Monster Inflicted Source of Chill and Shock Effect to be multiplicative rather than additive. So this means that now if you actually get 100% reduced, for example, effect of shock, it actually means you're shock immune. So before this patch, in case you didn't know, if you had 100% reduced shock effect, all that meant was the enemy has to hit for double to inflict the same shock, but you can still be shocked. Especially against enemies that have increased effect of shock, that was really bad. But now, that increased effect of shock is more shock, which means if you get 100% reduced, you're still immune. This is especially interesting because there might be a cold version of this jewel right here. They've showed a fire version and a lightning version already, and they're like a void and reduced duration, and the last one is probably going to be reduced effect. So just know that that one is also going to be very sought after because it's basically as good as the Storm Shroud. Then we have March of the Legion, which is looking incredibly strong. After looking at the info here, now we have seen Vaal Smite right here. As you can see, it gives a lot of bonus down there, 17 to 330 lightning damage, and this scales quite high with levels. And the thing about it is Smite does have an aura tag, which means you can throw it on March of the Legions without getting this crappy downside down here. You can also throw in an Empower and just completely pop off with like a level 30 plus Smite, especially because you also can corrupt it for up to +4. And to a lesser extent, this also goes for Vaal Caress, also gives +5, also has the chance to be corrupted. Also gets you Onslaught, which is pretty cool. And then we have something that repeats every league, that Essence is not on the map device, which is basically people saying, okay, Essences are not worth farming. It's completely untrue. It doesn't really change much. So you being able to get more Essences on your tree is nice and all, but it also completely inflates the prices of them, right? People are always going to use Essences. They are going to have to. It is one of the easiest ways to progress your gear. And whether there's more out there or not doesn't really change much in terms of profit. Because if there's less from the map device, there's just going to be they're just going to be worth more per. So if people are talking about that, just completely ignore them. One thing that might definitely happen, though, is that they don't nerf Arch Nemesis correctly, and Essences are still completely busted. So just watch out for that. That could still be a problem for weaker builds early. And then a little thing about league starting, in case you don't exactly know where you want to go, you're not sure about your league starter. Like, let's say you're EK Ignite and you're not 100% sure. Now, you're probably safe at the end of the day because Witch is incredibly versatile this patch. If you're a Witch and you don't like, for example, EK Ignite, you can still go EA Ballista, you can still go Moth Mischief. And if you're a Cultist, I mean, the world is your oyster, right? You have this Chaos Path here for stuff like Poison. There's a lot of good Poison builds. You can go Chaos Dot, you can go Cold Dot. All I'm saying is if you're somebody who's not really sure, picking any build on a Witch will probably lead to decent results. Also, you're kinda near Poison right here, right? You can always path here. So Poisonous Concoction is always one of these incredibly solid skills that you can fall back on. And yeah, that's all I have. Probably going to be the last video before league start. We don't know much about the Atlas passive tree, so ripping pepperonis, I guess. And yeah, have a good league start. See you around. That's all I got for now. If you want to hang out with me on league start, twitch.tv/Palsteron, the place to do that. I hope everybody has a good league start. Probably my last video before. I hope. Otherwise, this section makes no sense. And yeah. Around.